Chapter 1 of 25 Sermons on the Holy Land. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Larry Wilson. 25 Sermons on the Holy Land by Thomas DeWitt Talmage. The eve of departure. And they accompanied him unto the ship. Acts 20:38. To the more than 25 million people in many countries, to whom my sermons come week by week, in English tongue and by translation, through the kindness of the press, I address these words. I dictate them to a stenographer on the eve of my departure for the Holy Land, Palestine. When you read this sermon, I will be in mid-Atlantic. I go to be gone a few weeks on a religious journey. I go because I want for myself and hearers and readers to see Bethlehem and Nazareth and Jerusalem and Calvary and all the other places connected with the Saviour's life and death, and so reinforce myself for sermons. I go also because I am writing the life of Christ and can be more accurate and graphic when I have been an eyewitness of the sacred places. Pray for my successful journey and my safe return. I wish on the eve of departure to pronounce a loving benediction upon all my friends in high places and low, upon congregations to whom my sermons are read in absence of pastors, on groups gathered out on prairies and in mining districts, upon all sick and invalid and aged ones who cannot attend churches, but to whom I have long administered through the printed page. My next sermon will be addressed to you from Rome, Italy, for I feel like Paul when he said, "So as much as is in me, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also." The fact is that Paul was ever moving about on land or sea. He was an old sailor, not from occupation, but from frequency of travel. I think he could have taken a vessel across the Mediterranean as well as some of the ship captains. The sailors never scoffed at him for being a landlubber. If Paul's advice had been taken, the crew would never have gone ashore at Melita. Paul on the ocean. When the vessel went scudding under bare poles, Paul was the only self-possessed man on board, and turning to the excited crew and despairing passengers, he exclaims in a voice that sounds above the thunder of the tempest and the wrath of the sea, "Be of good cheer." The men who now go to sea with maps and charts and modern compass, warned by buoy and lighthouse, know nothing of the perils of ancient navigation. Horace said that the man who first ventured on the sea must have had a heart bound with oak and triple brass. People then ventured only from headland to headland and from island to island, and not until long after spread their sail for a voyage across the sea. Before starting, the weather was watched, and the vessel having been hauled up on the shore, the mariners placed their shoulders against the stern of the ship and heaved it off, they at the last moment leaping into it. Vessels were then chiefly ships of burden, the transit of passengers being the exception. For the world was not then migratory, as in our day, when the first desire of a man in one place seems to be to get into another place. The ship from which Jonah was thrown overboard, and that in which Paul was carried prisoner, went out chiefly with the idea of taking a cargo. As now, so then, vessels were accustomed to carry a flag. In those times it was inscribed with the name of a heathen deity. A vessel bound for Syracuse had on it the inscription, "Castor and Pollux." The ships were provided with anchors. Anchors were of two kinds, those that were dropped into the sea, and those that were thrown up onto the rocks to hold the vessel fast. This last kind was what Paul alluded to when he said, "Which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and that which entereth into that within the veil." That was what the sailors call a hook anchor. The rocks and sandbars, shoals and headlands not being mapped out, vessels carried a plumb line. They would drop it and find the water 50 fathoms, and drop it again and find it 40 fathoms, and drop it again and find it 30 fathoms, thus discovering their near approach to the shore. In the spring, summer, and autumn, the Mediterranean Sea was white with the wings of ships, but at the first wintry blast they hied themselves to the nearest harbor, although now the world's
Sample complete. Ready to continue?